But you're here now, so no need for that, eh?
Look
Thanks
out.
for the rescue.
What a waste of good genes. You could use some Bacta, Delta.
Retrieving Bacta.
Scorch? Pal? You okay?
Hold off on that Bacta, Commando.
6-2, canceling Bacta.
Stop limping around and get some Bacta, soldier.
On my way, squad leader.
Oh boy. Star Wars Republic Commando originally released in early 2005, 2 months before the final prequel film hit the theaters. This was the time Star Wars was thriving in the video game medium, as so many beloved and well-regarded titles released within these couple of years. Republic Commando in particular was a highly requested game out of the bunch, and after playing it for the first time only this year, I can confidently say that it's one of the better Star Wars games I've played. The atmosphere and sound design were top-notch, and the gameplay mechanics and art direction feel very distinct from what I've come to expect in a game with this license. In terms of negatives, there are some areas that lack the depth that I would have really liked to see, plus a few other untapped potential quibbles, but beyond that, I only have one genuine problem with the game, and it's likely the same problem most people have with it. Regardless of how you feel about the ending, it's a huge shame Imperial Commando never came to be. This was the proposed sequel that was cancelled early in production that would have likely carried on from where Republic Commando ended. I think it could have very well improved on what we have now by ironing out some of the kinks and properly expanding on this truly outstanding proof of concept. Since none of this is canon anymore, we're unlikely to see anything from Delta Squad ever again. Well, except that 2-second clip of Scorch and Bad Batch, that was really weird. Republic Commando was exclusive to the Xbox when it released, got a PC port as well, and a decade and a half later, it made the transition to newer consoles. Even though I did manage to get a working copy for the Xbox to test a few things, as well as give the PC port a shot, the version of Republic Commando I played all the way through was the Switch version. Asper's track record for modern-day ports is a bit mixed, as they definitely have brought new life to a few games, even Stubbs the Zombie. However, their quality seems to be suspect. I won't lament too much on the port itself, but I did notice some problems. The frame rate seemed to be worse, and the load times were longer than I'd like, but those were mostly easy to ignore. More problematic were the times where I couldn't aim to the side past a certain point. My camera came to a dead stop, as if it was up against an invisible wall. I had to spin around the other way to fix it, and this happened more than a couple of times. Not great. Finally, there seemed to be an audio issue where certain voice lines would cut off abruptly, and oddly enough, it mostly affected Scorch.
Breach that door.
On our way.
Wookiees could use it to get an edge on the slavers.
Yeah! Wookiee life debts for everyone.
Squad leader, locate turret controls and commence disabling maneuvers.
Disabling maneuvers.
Blowing things up.
Oh, I knew that.
Kind of a shame, since his dialogue was some of the best in the game. Anyway, enough about the technical problems and port issues, let's talk about the visual and audio design. It's really good. Before playing Republic Commando, I didn't think such an engrossing atmosphere was even possible for a Star Wars game. It's clearly a more gritty and down-to-earth, well, down-to-Kashyyyk take on things we'd normally see, and I'm really happy the designers were able to alter a few things to suit their vision. The super battle droids had their height and body width increased a bit, which gives them a lot of presence on the battlefield and makes them look a little more imposing. This could be all in my head, but I don't think so. Oh shit, he's not dead. The Geonosians are a better example. Going off the source material, they look kinda goofy, but in Republic Commando, they look more menacing, like something you could be afraid of. The best of all are the regular droids. Their ominous glowing eyes genuinely gave me a fright when first playing. You die pretty quickly in this game, and even though these enemies eventually became pushovers, their appearance honestly creeped me out early on. These subtle changes helped give the enemy design, and in turn, the game its own flavor, reinforcing the dark and edgy mood the designers were going for. I feel like this is something we're just not likely to see anymore. Veering off the source material seems to be a no-go under Disney, and seeing the droids in particular look in any way different from the Clone Wars or prequels at this point would be ridiculously surprising. Star Wars needs to look a certain way these days with barely any creative interpretation allowed, and Republic Commando really exemplifies why this strict uniformity is a shame. The heads-up display of your visor is also something fairly unique, even if Metroid Prime did it a couple years earlier. The rain getting cleared from your visor with the windshield wiper thing is neat, and the same goes for the blood and guts that splatter onto it. It doesn't make as much sense when it seemingly repairs cracks in the visor, but either way, it's still a great detail. With what feels like another inspiration from Metroid Prime, your visor has multiple different settings. Well, no, sorry, it's only one different setting, that being low light mode. It is cool, but there aren't that many dark areas in the game, so it unfortunately doesn't see much use. Those dark areas being nearly pitch black is awesome, but that also makes it kind of a no-brainer as well. There's not much in the way of decision-making with the low light setting. You see a dark room, you turn it on, and that's that. It would have been nice if a few enemies had attacks or stances that would overload your visor or something. Hey, kinda like Metroid Prime did. Much like Metroid Prime, again, there's an enemy that makes your visor kinda fuzzy when you're near it, and wouldn't you believe it, even dive bomb towards you as it dies. I have no problems at all with these Metroid Prime influences, and if anything, I would have liked to see more, like another visor or two. Infrared or X-ray could possibly fit right in. The source material restriction could prove problematic with the idea of adding some fancy visors, but if anything, that bolsters my point about Star Wars as a license being too limiting. The visors are a worthwhile inclusion, and I definitely like them, but there really isn't much to it, where I think there could have been, especially with the benefit of a direct sequel. Also, just to say it as bluntly as possible before I move on, because sometimes certain people need to hear it before commenting something silly, I'm literally comparing a 2005 game to a 2002 game, so my desires for more visors and more uses for them is completely founded in reality. Along with the enemies and HUD, the environments have a lot going for them as well, and are more detailed than I was expecting. Flickering lights, debris falling from cave ceilings, swinging lamps, sparks shooting from broken consoles, and even glass that can shatter when you fire at it. These small touches make this already surprisingly immersive game world feel that much more engrossing. The physics in relation to the enemies helps with this as well. Their limp bodies feel like they have a lot of weight to them, and your blaster shots and grenade explosions can interact with the corpses, which isn't even something many modern games take into consideration. The sound design is another important factor when it comes to setting the mood, and Republic Commando excels here as well. Surprisingly, I'm not here to gush about the usual sound effects, even though that's become the norm for standout Star Wars games. It was very interesting to see the behind-the-scenes video on the Foley work for the game, showing how they got a few of the sounds, like pineapples for the Trandoshan footsteps. However, what truly sets Republic Commando apart in its audio design is the implementation of the soundtrack and the dialogue as a whole. Because this was set in the Clone Wars, the songs from the prequels are mostly what we hear, and I am more than okay with that. This could be an unpopular opinion, but I think the prequels have the better music selection. You know what they sound like, but I'll try to splice in a few seconds of each song if I can. If YouTube doesn't like it, I'll do an a cappella version for you instead. I certainly hope it doesn't come to that.
Abandon position, Delta.
Let's
Get clear! Keep moving, Deltas.
Now ready. That's done.
Dead.
Down.
Even better than the prequel music, Republic Commando has its own original score, which pairs with their dark and military take on the Star Wars universe. The main menu song is honestly epic as fuck, and I don't use that word lightly. It's used with great success in key areas of the game, usually to unveil more enemies or when your squad finally succeeds in a hectic battle.
Eliminate target.
It's done. In local here.
Apparently, the words spoken in the song are actually in the Mandalorian language. Well, it's probably more accurate to say that these lyrics were what kickstarted the creation of the Mandalorian language. Karen Travis, who has written many books about the stories of Mandalorians and clone troopers, said she was sent the Republic Commando song when writing Hard Contact, and used the lyrics as a base to create the grammar and vocabulary. To think Disney swiped all of this away without any care in the world, only to give us the fucking sequel trilogy. Fucking awful. But hey, at least the Mandalorian is good.
I have spoken.
Anyway, all 4 of the Commandos and Delta Squad are voice acted by different people. 62, or Scorch, was voiced by Raphael Sparge, who has been in a few other Star Wars games in the past, even voicing Karth in the Old Republic games.
Abort demolition.
You're no fun anymore, sir.
Over here.
If we're all clones, why am I the only one with a sense of humor? Did I miss anything important?
No. Did you get the data?
Yeah, they searched me, but I hid the data pretty well.
Where exactly?
You don't want to know.
4-0, or Fixer, was voiced by Andrew Chalkin, who also did the voice for the clone advisor you hear.
But they're impenetrable to our large assault forces.
What's that?
It's a droid dispenser, 07. Next time, read the briefing. Trando mark, taken out. Just like the simulator.
He's been in a ton of video games, like Lord of the Rings as Legolas, Boba Fett, and other clone voices in other Star Wars games, and even did some voice work for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? That's nuts. 07, or Sev, was voiced by Jonathan David Cook, who has also voiced for a few video games in the past. I actually can't believe how small the list is for him, since his lines were just as good as the rest, and he has a very distinct voice.
Oh, now we've made them mad. Good. This place reeks of bugs. Boss, hold on to your guts while I rip out theirs.
Finally, Delta 38, the player character, is voiced by none other than Tamwara Morrison. Fucking hell, man, he never phones it in. I love this man.
I hope this flight recorder data gives us a clue as to how these stupid lizards took over a Republic assault ship. An elegant weapon for a more civilized time, huh? Well, guess what? Times have changed.
I don't usually list the voice actors out in my reviews, but the dialogue in this game is so well done, I would have felt guilty if I didn't. Not only are the lines well delivered and feel natural, they go a long way in connecting the player to this squad of commandos. One of the reasons this is such a compelling game is the squad-based tactical gameplay on offer, where you order your commandos to accomplish certain tasks or take cover in a specific spot. For the player to feel at all invested in these AI companions, they had to have their own character. I can easily imagine a version of this game where this wasn't Star Wars, these 3 AI soldiers don't talk at all and have no personality. That game sounds far less interesting than Republic Commando. As much as I give out about the license being too limiting, I can also acknowledge where it helps, and for these 3 distinct and lovable personalities, the Star Wars setting just works so perfectly. Some of the lines go for a more edgy and badass vibe.
You lizards need to learn that I'm a lot scarier than you are.
Stupid lizards thought they could get the ship's update out of me.
It's alright, Commander. You're safe now.
Good. I've got more lizards to kill.
While plenty others go for humor.
I think it. I see it. A Trade Federation battleship.
Yeah, not even you can see into hyperspace, Sev.
No, it's on the edge of the system. Take a look.
Oh, blast.
Someone important noted your excellence on Geonosis.
You hear that, Sev? Someone thinks I'm excellent.
Well, at least that makes 2 of you.
This, to me, really speaks to how in tune the designers were with the Star Wars license as a whole. Yes, they were going for a dark and gritty atmosphere for most of the game, but they also knew that the camaraderie between squad mates was paramount, and humor stemming from dialogue wouldn't be out of place, but instead bring you closer to these characters. Even though the source material at times went a bit too far in one direction for my liking, they were usually able to strike a balance between serious drama and comedy relief, or at least that's what they were going for anyway. Republic Commando matches that tone fans are familiar with, as the comedy relief and drama are both present but don't get in the way of each other. The Star Wars license also helps with the idea that the good guys are joking as they slaughter their enemies.
One more for the slag heap. Another dead. Rocket turrets.
Look! Fireworks! Bugs just won't quit!
Good. More bugs. More kills.
How many kills you got today, Psycho?
With you, wise guy.
Keep this comm clear, you 2.
Calm down, Fixer. Just having a little fun.
I personally wouldn't feel comfortable if these were military soldiers saying this shit about other humans, but against droids? Yeah, that's fine. Obviously, Geonosians are living beings, however, because they're so alien-like and resemble bugs from our world, regardless of how xenophobic this sounds, it is a bit easier to disconnect. All of this is to say, the dialogue was one of the best parts of the game, and the quality is something I was not expecting going in at all. The gameplay on the surface could be categorized as a shooter. I mean, it is a shooter, you do shoot things, but it's really nice that your squad can handle a lot of the action if you plan accordingly in certain areas. The main gimmick is, of course, the squad commands, where you can tell your commandos to take over nearby turrets, utilize cover, plant explosives as a trap, and even focus fire on a single enemy. Even the act of opening doors has some flavor added to it, as you're usually presented with two supposedly distinct choices. One is the door breach, which is quick, loud, but effective when enemies are right behind it. You can also covertly slice into the terminal nearby, which takes longer, but is quieter. Even though IGN recommends slicing every door so it can function as a barricade from enemy fire, I never found slicing to be very helpful, and if anything, the doors got in my way more often than not. It's not like there are stealth kills or anything, and considering for the vast majority of doors there wasn't a way of knowing if there would be enemies on the other side, opting to not breach and throw a grenade felt like a pointless gamble. I believe some areas have a camera in place where you could see what was around the corner or up ahead, but those certainly weren't the norm, and I literally couldn't find clips of it happening even though I scoured my footage twice through. I think this could have been an interesting choice, being quiet or being loud, if the game provided more obvious stealth advantages like silent takedowns, or maybe even a timed group sniper shot to capitalize on the squad gimmick. At the very least, it would have been nice if the clones were given a SWAT under-door camera to check to see what the enemy layout was before making the decision. Even still, the grenade the squad throws in during a breach doesn't count against you, so it still feels like that's the better option. As it is now, the only real choice present is whether or not you want to spend 10 seconds to keep the door intact, and I don't think that's a particularly interesting decision. The other commands you'll make often feel similar to the door dilemma in the sense that there's not usually much thinking required. If you see cover, it's almost always to your advantage to send a squad mate there. Certain areas do manage to stand out, however, with many places to put your commandos, sometimes even a turret, and even a few sabotage explosive opportunities as well. This is all well and good, but the most involved decisions come from the droid spawners, as you need to send someone over there to plant an explosive, otherwise they'll endlessly spit out droids, even as you're in the process of planting the bomb. For the regular droid dispensers, it's not a big deal, but when you have super battle droids coming out, sometimes even droidicas as well, it heightens the tension to a fever pitch. You'll have to think about which spawner to take out first, which enemies to focus fire on, and when to send over a commando in the first place. Add in potentially scrambling to find more ammo, moving commandos to a different spot, or even deciding whether you can revive a squad mate who's been knocked out. All of these relatively simple decisions in a vacuum become increasingly difficult to make as the stressors seem to pile on in an unrelenting fashion. These climactic moments are where the game is at its best, because it truly feels like your decisions are what dictates whether your squad will survive or not. There are lesser versions of this idea sprinkled around the game that feel just as great, such as when you'll need to close the shutters to keep the Geonosians from pouring into the room. If you've played a lot of games before, these sections may seem awfully familiar to a certain type of mission most people hate. Defend the point of interest, or in other words, protect an NPC for X amount of time while they do some important story thing. Republic Commando goes to show that these supposed tired tropes of the medium aren't always bad, it all comes down to the execution and window dressing. You're the squad leader, you're the one making the decision to send someone over to stop the enemies from multiplying, and of course you want to protect them at all costs. They're your boys. Even better, with the exception of taking cover behind barricades, you can also opt to take over every one of these duties yourself. If your squad is perfectly in position, maybe it's best for you to plant the explosive or to slice the terminal while you rely on your trusted comrades to watch your back. I'm sure even the people who haven't played this game before can see how well this AI squad comes across. There's a fine line when it comes to the competency of companion AI, and I feel like a lot of developers are overly cautious not to cross it. Get too scared of it, and the player's companions can't do anything for themselves and are generally completely helpless. This can be better than the alternative depending on the type of game, but obviously one size doesn't fit all. It seems to me like designers, as a whole, are very worried about making their game's friendly AI too good. Their thinking is likely because the player wouldn't need to do as much, it wouldn't feel enough like what video game combat is supposed to feel like. I don't think very many games veer too far in that direction, but even if that is a possibility, Republic Commando managed to tread that line very well. In the climactic moments, there's no way these guys are handling this on their own without your direction and strategic grenade throws. However, in plenty of smaller battles, you don't really have to do much, and I think that's okay. If a player is proud of their squad, genuinely feels connected to them and their success, I think seeing their commandos take down a super battle droid on their own can be enjoyable, even cathartic. Those are your boys after all. This just illustrates how important the personalities and voice lines are to this game. Not having to lift a finger in certain scenarios, in most other games, might elicit a bout of laughter, and not in a positive way. The game plays itself, some snob might shout, and at times I have been that snob. Just never in Republic Commando, because I was always personally invested in my squad's accomplishments. This gets taken even further when you lose all of your health, as you don't automatically die, but instead the game keeps playing and you get a choice. Maintain the squad's current orders, or make one of them revive you ASAP. Having the option to place your trust in your team feels like the game is also trusting you as a player to not only have patience, but to understand the point of this game. You are the leader, but you aren't the main character, all 4 of you are. Yeah, you don't get to play right now, but if you're properly engaging with the game, you're likely more focused about what the next winning decision will be, and sometimes that means letting your teammates clear the way before rescuing you. It's also nice that they aren't completely passive when it comes to friendly fire. If you clearly shoot at them enough times, they turn against you. Considering this never happened to me besides the times where I went rogue on purpose, it's evident that a few stray shots won't trigger it, which is for the best. As great as the AI can be, and as fun as the squad controls are as a whole, I do have my issues with them, and these are really things I think that could have been addressed in a sequel, since I feel like they're so close to being exceptional. Sometimes your squad will behave in truly baffling ways. The best example I have is near the end of the game, when I had them set to seek and destroy, yet they wanted to camp out near the start of the area and fire at the ship in the sky. They wouldn't even move unless I chose the form up option, which is very much not how it usually works. At other times, it seemed like they would simply refuse to fire at the enemy, even when they're standing right in front of them. I can understand that using your focus fire command should result in that target dying faster than if you hadn't used it, but it sometimes felt like my commandos wouldn't shoot unless I gave the order, which can't possibly be right. The squad controls work just fine, but as I mentioned earlier, it feels a little too straightforward. The moment you meet these characters, you're introduced to their specialty as well. Scorch is the big boom guy, he loves blowing stuff up with explosions.
I'm dying to blow something up.
Fixer is
Supremely qualified.
when it comes to technical things like slicing into a terminal. Sev is, well, he's a crazy killing machine.
Man, this place gives me the creeps.
Scorch, nothing better than a jungle hunt. Hiding in the bush, putting a plasma bolt through a hostile's cranium, makes me feel alive.
Now, 07's giving me the creeps.
You're even shown some text boxes that mention which weapon they prefer using. Sev is a sniper, Scorch likes anti-armor rounds, and Fixer prefers up close and personal with his blade. All that being said, none of that will play a role in literally any of the decisions you make. Scorch doesn't plant explosive charges faster, Fixer doesn't slice into terminals quicker, and Sev isn't more capable at taking down enemies. I realize this was made with controllers in mind, so keeping it simple was likely their main focus, but I really don't think allowing the player to choose a squad mate for each task would be that much more of a nuisance. As it is now, hovering over the action hologram and pressing A will send over a free commando to do the job. If they're all busy with a different task, it will remove one of them from the previous location to go to the new location. It seems like the priority is in placement order, so if you had initially placed Scorch, then Fixer, then Sev, Scorch would be next in line. My idea would be this. Keep the one button press action the same, but immediately afterwards is a prompt, left, up, right, or down. Again, this wouldn't be too out of the ordinary, as you do need to hold the action button and press a directional input when choosing to form up, cancel orders, hold a position, and search and destroy. Those are always in the same location on the D-pad, which you eventually become familiar with, and my idea would be similar, just for your squad mates. Always keep the directions the same, and have the remaining fourth option be any squad member who is currently available, which would also function as a let the game decide button for people who don't care. Scorch on the left, Fixer up top, Sev on the right, and down is whoever. It's only one more input per command, so I don't think this would slow down the experience much, and since there would always be the option to press down every single time for less efficiency, people who hate the extra tactical decision could essentially skip it. For players who choose to engage with it, this would add a little more nuance to their command decisions, and would better encourage them to remember which squad member is best suited for which task. This would have to go along with real differences, of course, such as reduced time for slicing and planting explosive charges, and maybe better damage output on turrets with Sev, perhaps. As it is now, it's kind of a shame seeing Sev plant explosive charges over and over when Sev himself has acknowledged that Scorch is the demolitions expert.
Was red, red, green, or red, green, red?
And he's supposed to be the demolition expert.
We need to detonate the rocks to get through. And I'm not just saying that because I love to blow stuff up.
Yes, you are.
Just a few.
My final issue when it comes to the squad controls, which isn't as big, but it certainly is a shame, is that the Commandos can't use other weapons unless the game gives the green light. I can take out my sniper or anti-armor launcher whenever I like, but the other Commandos can't. The only time they can utilize other equipment is when the game provides a place of cover that grants access to it. Even though the cover may appear almost identical, one might grant access to sniper rifles, one might grant access to anti-armor rounds, and one might have them throw grenades. I have seen them use grenades without the cover option, but I don't think I've ever seen them use other weapons without it. At best, this feels overly restrictive, and at worst, completely arbitrary. As a contrast, even though functionally they're the same thing, the turrets don't feel as contrived, since it's part of the environment, and its stationary, rigid position gives reason as to why only in that spot a better weapon can be used. Only allowing Sev to use his supposed favorite weapon in certain gimmick locations is kind of a letdown, both from the game, but myself as well. Like I said, I love these guys, so I kind of felt bad that I was able to use their favorite weapon right in front of them while they were stuck with the regular blaster. The weapon switching in this game is conceptually very interesting. You can configure your blaster rifle with certain attachments on the fly to create a sniper or a grenade launcher. While functionally it's no different than if you were carrying the 3 weapons at once, this makes it feel a little more believable that these Commandos aren't just hulking around 4 guns in a Resident Evil 4 briefcase or something. In addition to the regulation Commando blaster rifle, sniper, and anti-armor launcher, you also have a backup infinite ammo pistol, which is legitimately terrible all things considered. There's enough ammo lying around for your other guns that it usually won't be a big deal. Since I brought up IGN and their guide already, why not show you what they said about this pistol? I mean, how old was the person who wrote this? While you'll always have those 4 weapons, you have one more slot to work with, and this time you have options. Your first and only choice early on is the Geonosian Elite Laser, which has a sick audio design.
Taking cover.
Eventually, you'll come across some Trandoshan weapons like a shotgun and some machine gun things.
An energy weapon that looks like a slug thrower. I didn't think lizards were that nostalgic.
I know in Mandalore's review of the game, he mentioned the shotgun being really good, but I thought it was honestly pretty underwhelming. Perhaps this has to do with how little the enemies will react when being hit with a shot. With the normal blaster rifle, it seemed obvious when the laser would connect or not, but with the shotgun, I couldn't even tell if it was hitting them half the time. The heavy chain gun from the Trandoshans is decently powerful though, so that was always worth it for me. The Wookiee bowcaster was party central, as it would ricochet its bolts off of walls. It's good for a few trick shots, but I thought it was surprisingly weak. On the whole, the weapons felt very inconsistent with their recoil. I won't lie, the jumpiness of the blaster rifle, even though it made it more difficult to aim with, felt strangely good for some reason. However, every now and then, your gun will randomly skyrocket upwards when you fire. This recoil oddity is so bizarre, as it definitely felt like it happened all the time, but it was extremely evasive when I tested for it. In a controlled environment, it often wouldn't trigger, so instead I just wasted a bunch of ammo for nothing. Once with the shotgun, I even started to aim upwards as I shot, to see if that would coax it out, but the times where I tilt the stick up versus the times it decided to randomly recoil hard are 2 very distinct animations. I tried with the blaster rifle as well, but again, this showed nothing, and only made Sev question his leader's sanity.
Sir, did you see something?
Oh shoot, Scorch 2.
I don't see anything, sir.
I don't quite understand this peculiarity, but I guess there's not much more I can say about it. If you happen to know why this happens, please leave a comment. Arguably more interesting than the weapon selection are the grenades. Thermal detonators are the standard, but you also have a concussion flashbang thing, some sort of electric stun, which is super effective against droids, and some type of sonic insta-exploder, which can be stuck to walls and floors, otherwise will blow up the moment it touches a hostile, or even a friendly. The variety would be nice either way, but the extra element of strategy these provided was the cherry on top, as some are clearly more useful in certain situations. A tactic that was supremely helpful on the assault ship was throwing a concussion grenade, then stabbing every Trandoshan as they were stunned. Fucking lizards. It would be nice if it was more obvious which grenade was which, though. You unfortunately just need to experiment and keep track of which symbol on the bottom right does what. The way you heal yourself, with the back to stations built into the wall, is a bit strange. On one hand, it is another order you can give your commandos, but the designated locations where you can essentially heal infinitum means you can always take a few minutes to walk back to a healing station instead of venturing forward with less than full health. Obviously, this is less than ideal, and it felt like the designers thought so too, as in some areas back to stations could be found in nearly adjacent rooms. It is kind of silly that someone in-game had to build these all over, but even though they don't make much sense when you stop to think about it, I think the uniqueness of it all wins out in the end. Most shooter games have a heal over time system, or if they're a better game, likely medkits or other healing items. Being unique is sometimes inherently valuable, and I think that's the case for the back to stations. It's not a terrible healing system or anything, and given that we never see this in other games, it adds to the charm of Republic Commando. The pacing of the levels feels pretty great for most of the game, however, the last third of it drags on to a ridiculous extent. The back of the box art boasts that there are over 15 levels of 8 varied alien environments. I'm not sure which environments they added up to get to 8, but ignoring that for now, there are essentially 3 chapters to the game: Geonosis, Assault Ship, and Kashyyyk. Before Geonosis, you'll see a brief montage of the clones' upbringing and training. You then board the transport ship on Commando, and finally land right in the middle of the hectic battlefield we see from the most recent Star Wars movie. Geonosis has a nice variety of areas, both outdoor and indoor, and manages to pace itself very well in a self-contained fashion. At one point, you even get a solo mission and have to fend for yourself without the help of your squad.
Alone against all these droids? They don't stand a chance.
Slowly sneaking around a droid storage facility is one of the highlights of the game, as right when you may have started to rely and depend on your commandos, the game takes them from you, forcing you into a far more tense situation than it would have been otherwise. After the 6 missions on Geonosis, there's a total of 4 on the assault ship. This is also paced very well, especially since it starts so differently than how Geonosis ended. Your squad splits up, and you then investigate this dark and spooky ship to find out what's going on. Eventually, you regroup with your commandos, and you all discover this.
What the?
Yeah, pretty messed up. This is where the Trandoshan enemies are introduced, and even though the environments are arguably more similar than Geonosis, the atmosphere of the ship itself is engrossing enough to not get boring, at least for the short amount of time you're here. Finally, you're sent to Kashyyyk. This is where the game goes off the rails. The forest backdrop is nice to see, but to be perfectly blunt, even it gets stale fairly quickly. Most of the game is very muted and gloomy, and here is no exception. You do traverse through some interiors as well, but because these were all made by the Wookiees, everything is made of wood, which means you'll be staring at a lot of brown. This all wouldn't be so bad, but somehow, this chapter took up half of my playthrough. It is the end of the game, so you'd expect it to be harder and to struggle more, which is basically the case, but I also had to stop a lot more than usual simply because I was getting so fatigued with these levels. It's almost like the designers were worried that the game would feel too short, so they stretched the Kashyyyk missions out, forcing you to do the same hangar capture jobs over and over to the point where they make the commandos lampshade the constant reuse of them.
Proceed to the hangar and clear the way for them.
Another hangar?
What can you say? Wookiees like hangars.
It's a shame because there are quite a few great moments here. This is before the final prequel film came out, so seeing a sneak peek of General Grievous is pretty nifty. The Wookiees can sometimes be helpful, and seeing them wail on the droids and Trandoshans is rather entertaining.
Chief's on the mark. Good one. Target area in view.
In a few situations, you can even use their corpses as cover, which is both grotesque and hilarious. I just wish this section didn't last as long as it does. Walking into another samey room to get yet another encounter with some super battle droids, the usual stuff you've been seeing for the whole game at this point, it really starts to wear thin. The fact that every enemy you've seen so far shows up in these late game areas makes it feel properly climactic, especially when the Magna Guards get thrown in as well, but this could have just as easily been achieved with 1 or 2 of these missions completely removed. I know I've already complained about it before, but honestly, Kashyyyk just had way too many fucking breachable doors. The repetitiveness, if anything, only shined a spotlight on how inconsequential and tedious the supposed decision really was. Instead of ending with a bang, the game limps to the finish line, fizzling out with a whimper. The ending sequence is also extremely underwhelming. You need to take down that ship in the sky, and every time you clear out one of the last few hangars, one of your squad mates gets automatically assigned to a nearby turret. You'll go from 3 down to 2, then finally you'll only have Scorch to watch your back. Once you all get to a turret, the ship goes down, hooray! But wait, Sev needs help.
Boss, I've got a problem here.
Sev, where are you?
Of course, I immediately rushed to help him out, since he really wasn't that far away from where we are now. Well, the advisor says we shouldn't, however, even Scorch agrees that we need to help Sev. The whole sequence is actually really great.
Jedi generals, clear the area. Evac now.
I don't care if they came from Master Yoda himself.
As a matter of fact, they did, soldier. Now get your squad out of there.
Blast our orders! 40?
He's right, boss. We gotta evac.
Sir, we have to go back.
Yeah, it just gets cut off abruptly, then you appear again in the ship. I guess you were evac'd out. This is a mess. Let's quickly go back. You probably saw how much ground I covered in that short amount of time, meaning I was practically 2-Sev at that point anyway. The evac, I'm assuming, landed in that hangar I was in originally, so us just appearing in the ship out of nowhere is pretty jarring. The dialogue kind of cuts off as well, but even worse is that 2 of the 3 remaining squad mates, 38 and Scorch, were clearly for the idea of saving their friend, so I don't know what suddenly convinced them to get in the evac after all. It certainly wasn't Yoda.
I don't care if they came from Master Yoda himself.
The dialogue in the ship itself also leaves me with some questions.
One Commando? He's talking about my pod brother.
Hold on, advisor. What do you mean, an entire operation?
I can't believe
Your team was the advance force for a full-scale Republic invasion. I had strict orders not to tell you. It was your reconnaissance, your intel that verified the operation, and now the invasion has begun.
Boss, look! It's the invasion force!
Public forces. Establish forward command in Kajiro.
Is that really who I think it is?
Rendezvous.
So, the fact that they were just reconnaissance for the full-scale invasion is presented like a reveal, but I don't understand how that explains why we couldn't go back to get Sev. Even worse is Yoda shows up and says everyone should join in on the invasion, and we're presumably ordered back in to potentially rescue Sev after all? Like, do you not remember it was Yoda who said to evac not 2 minutes ago? That was the reason we couldn't save Sev, and now he's saying to go back in? It's ridiculously silly, and it feels like a needless cliffhanger that, again, presumably, was meant to lead into the sequel that got cancelled. Ugh. Since Republic Commando is a standalone title, the ending sequence is just outright awful, and the final missions being a slog to get through made it even worse. Anyway, that was Republic Commando. Certainly a game that's easy to recommend, as it has a lot going for it. The atmosphere, a word I've said many times now, is outrageously engrossing. The sound design and dialogue are some of the best I've seen, especially for a Star Wars game, and the squad gimmick made what would have been a regular shooter a lot more enjoyable. However, there's no denying that some of this could be improved on. Maybe if there was ever a remake of Republic Commando, we could have real stealth options to make the door breaches more interesting, deeper squad command mechanics as to better utilize your commandos to capitalize on their strengths. Perhaps they could even cut out a quarter, if not more, of the Kashyyyk levels to make the pacing feel smoother, and maybe even craft a more satisfying ending. Imagine if a big chunk of the current Kashyyyk section was removed, and instead, at the end, you fought your way back to Sev and saved him. Hindsight is 20/20, so obviously having the knowledge that there isn't a sequel makes that seem like an obvious fix, but I certainly won't hold it against the original developers. This could have led into Part 2 quite nicely, but unfortunately, Star Wars games have a habit of getting cancelled. I suppose with the sheer number of them out there, putting other licenses to shame, it's only natural that a handful here and there would be scrapped. Certainly a shame though, and out of all the cancelled Star Wars games, Imperial Commando is near the top for me of ones I would have loved to play. That, along with Battlefront 3, and whatever the fuck 1313 would have been. Hope you enjoyed this Star Wars video game review. You know, what many people visit my channel exclusively for. Watch my other shit and subscribe, you fucking nerds. So now that these 2 Star Wars videos are done with, I can finally say, yeah, I need to listen to my brain from now on. I know Star Wars is what gets the algorithm going, but I don't think I could have made a good video on this game back in December. This was supposed to be the game in place of Dragon Ball Z Budokai. Back then, I didn't like what little I had played of Republic Commando, and was very much not engaged with it. If I had pushed through, the video quality would have suffered tremendously, and I doubt I'd have as many interesting things to say on it. That being the case, if I feel a Star Wars mood, I'll go for it, but if not, it's honestly for the best that I do something else. Anyway, that's enough rambling from me. No idea what the next video will be, as per usual, but I hope to see you then. Have a good one. Bum ba ba bum bum ba ba bum ba bum ba bum bum ba 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 bum bum ba 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 bum 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 do 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 do. Okay, I think that was actually pretty good.